Welcome to another Sober on a Drunk Planet podcast. And this week's guest is Ben, lead singer of Orange Goblin, and been sober for over how long now?
It's approaching 2 years and 5 months now.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
And
March 2022, I went sober, and
well,
best ever did.
and I think the reason that we know each other is because I think you posted on your Instagram page about reading the Sober on a Drunk Planet Giving Up Alcohol book.
I
Is that right?
did. Um, when I decided to get sober, as I mentioned to you previously, I got myself a PT to help with the accountability, and I knew that if I was paying someone to guide me through to that side of the journey, then I'd stick to it. And what he did was he recommended me a couple of books, yours being one of them. And I thought it was a fascinating insight. I found it really, really helpful because, to get sober, I didn't sort of approach Alcoholics Anonymous or anything like that. I just sort of got it into my head that I wanted to do it, not just for me, but for the people around me. And I could connect with your book on so many levels, because it's not just the drinking, it's the drugs and the social life that goes with it and everything. And obviously coming from a musician background, there's a lot of similarities there. So it really hit home, and I found myself sitting there going, yeah, this is so relevant to what I've been through and everything. So I found it really, really helpful. And since then I've recommended it to many other people as well. The other book that I found really useful was, I'm not sure if you read it, it was called Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Yeah, it's still like the biggest grossing book ever,
Yeah,
and it's been I remember reading that. It was really good for giving me that idea that small habits will build up and up,
yeah,
and that to be influenced the book that I wrote, in terms of like the sober compound effect as
yeah,
well.
yeah. I just think that was a big part of my transformation, was, disposing of those bad habits and implementing healthy routines, and little things make a big difference. So yeah, alongside Atomic Habits, your book was a game changer.
Real. And thanks for the marketing. I always love it when people, because I don't always want to talk about the book because it's more about your story, but that is how we connected in the first place.
Yeah,
Um,
it's an
and
important part of my journey. So,
and that's what I love, because I've literally spent 30 minutes going through all your posts, just seeing your own transformation, and it's brilliant. Because that's what it's all about. And I think your story will resonate with a different set of people that me, as a 38-year-old who plays a lot of golf, will resonate with some other people.
yeah,
Um, so we'll get into what led you up to your, I call it the sober tipping point. I think it's the point where most of us get sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, and we think, you know what, I've had enough of feeling like shit all the time. There must be um, something better out there. So, what was life like? So, how long have you been with Orange Goblin? So, you're the lead singer for, is it, correct me if I'm, is it heavy metal?
it is. Yeah, we're kind of if you'd imagine a cross between Black Sabbath and Motorhead. It's
Okay. Yeah.
it's not the most extreme heavy metal out there, and it's, we've got songs that you could even consider quite accessible, but it's pretty underground, and it's pretty heavy. Um, and I've been doing this for 30 years. We actually started in 1994 under a different guise. We was called Our Haunted Kingdom, which was more of a death metal band, because I didn't have the confidence to sing properly. So I just sort of hid behind a microphone and a curtain of hair, and just growled into the microphone. But as we kind of developed a sound, when we were just all friends that sort of hung out together, and we were bored, sitting around drinking all day, listening to our favorite bands, Metallica and Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and we wanted to give it a go ourselves. So we did, and we had no preconceptions of where it would go. It was, honestly, our main ambitions were to maybe record a 3-track demo and then play a few local pubs in the area. And it just really escalated. It happened at a healthy time in music, because this was pre-internet and pre you know, things like Bandcamp and SoundCloud and things where it was easy to share your music. We had to go out and sort of have human connection, and we had to trade tapes, and we had to hand out flyers and things like that. And we made a lot of good connections in the mid-90s. And our music kind of got tied into a movement that was called stoner rock because of its affiliation with smoking weed
Yeah.
because of the Black Sabbath connection, I guess. But you know, if you ask me, what's the definition of stoner rock? It could be people get stoned listening to Pink Floyd or The Orb, or it could relate to any sort of music really. But we was caught up in this thing called stoner rock, and there were a lot of American artists coming over around that time that were very successful in that field. Bands like Monster Magnet and Caius, and being a London-based band, we were the go-to sort of support act, and it really helped elevate our profile and kicked us off. And we ended up getting a record deal with one of our heroes, a guy called Lee Dorian from a band called Cathedral. We had a record label called Rise Above, and we put out 5 albums on his label, and it was his band that took us on tour all around Europe. So we'd gone from, you know, relative obscurity to all of a sudden being known all over the world. We did tours in, as I say, Europe. We went to Japan. It weren't long before we went to the US and did stuff over there. So it was a real kind of, you know, roller coaster of a ride, if you like. And obviously, when you're in a band in that genre, you're surrounded by alcohol and you're surrounded by drugs and partying, and it all goes hand in hand with the lifestyle. You know, the sex, drugs, rock and roll thing. We did the drugs and the rock and roll, but not the sex. And, you know, it was yeah, it's I have no regrets because it's been a wonderful time. You know, I'm very fortunate. I growing up, most kids have ambitions to either be a professional footballer or a rock star, and I've been fortunate enough to sort of dip my toe into both. Because prior to being in the band, I moved to London to become a footballer at Queen's Park Rangers, and I spent 2 years there as a YTS apprentice. That's where I met Martin, the original bass player in our band, and we decided that drinking and heavy metal was the route we wanted to go down, which is probably a stupid decision when you look at what footballers earn these days.
Yeah.
But we did, and yeah, that's saying there's no real regrets because the path that I've followed with Orange Goblin has led me to who I am today. And despite all the ups and downs and the debauchery, there's been some great times. There's been some amazing achievements. You know, I've seen the world. I've experienced amazing people, amazing cultures, and I consider myself very lucky. And as you get older, you know, I'll be 50 in December, and you look around you, and I've seen a lot of people of a similar age fall by the wayside because of alcohol, because of drugs, and lost their life far too early. And I didn't want to be another one of those. I didn't want to be another rock and roll casualty. And you know, it's an industry where there's not a great deal of support for that. Not just the physical aspect of it, but the mental aspect of it as well. There's not a lot of people understand the pressure and the boredom there is in music. So I just decided that enough was enough. You know, I could see that I'd got to the point where, you know, after 30 years, 28 years it was at the time, that, you know, I'd done everything I wanted to do in that respect. And I could see that how it was changing me. You know, I was out of shape. I was having bouts of depression, and I was becoming aggressive and things like that. And it was having an effect on my personal life with my wife and my son and my bandmates and just pretty much everyone that I cared about. So I knew that I had to make a change.
Did you have any sort of interventions with it, or was it just like things like you said, one thing after another, and you sort of got to your own?
There was a kind of chain of events that goes back to sort of around 2011, 2012, I think it was. I went to the doctor for just a general checkup because I was getting like jaundice around my eyes, and I was drinking a lot then. And the doctor said, "How much do you drink?" And you know, when you go to the doctors and they ask you these questions, you're never totally honest. So I sort of reined it in a little bit, and I told him how many units it was. Can't remember exactly what it was, but he was like, "Well, that's excessive." And they did some tests on my liver, and they were saying that, you know, it was in really bad shape. So I had to go on this course where I stopped drinking for a while, and they made me take this what was it, molasses, and apple cider vinegar and spoonful
Okay.
of molasses, this treacle type stuff,
Yeah.
and healthy and you know, the liver is one organ that can repair itself if it's given a chance.
Yeah.
Um, but I never really stuck to it. I've started drinking again, and that's because of what I did with the band. I suppose you go on tour, and I didn't see any sort of alternative to sitting in the dressing room and drinking until showtime and then partying afterwards. And so yeah, there were a few attempts for me to change my ways, but no real intervention as such. It was more of a case of I could see the damage it was doing to not just myself but to the people around me, and I just decided enough was enough. COVID was obviously a big game changer as well for a lot of people because of lockdown. You know, I lost my job as a booking agent during COVID, had a pretty decent payoff, and because of that, I was stuck at home with a load of money, and that obviously led to the inevitable binge drinking and everything, and what would have normally been like a one night turned into 4 day benders and things like that, and it just spiraled out of all control. So my wife and I were living in East London at that time. We decided that we'd move to Cornwall to try and escape that London scene and the social circles that we were in, thinking that that would be what was needed. But we got to Cornwall, and because it's so remote there, and there was nothing else to
Almost
do,
worse.
it was worse because you know the off licenses close earlier, and the drugs are more expensive. So it was
Because they got to travel all the way from where you've
yeah,
just been.
exactly. So it was even worse down there, and we spent a year down there and moved back to London. And it was when I moved back that I realised I'd set up my own business. That was one thing that I did do with the payoff that I got. I went into business with another guy and set up my own booking agency. And fortunately, all of my clients came with me, gave me an opportunity, and I realised then that if I carried on drinking, I weren't going to be productive with my business. And yeah, just one day, just went, you know what, that's it. I need to focus on the things that are important to me. So I made that change.
So I guess then the next set of questions is what's changed? I'll just look at some areas, but let's start with the band. How has you getting sober changed how you are as the lead singer of the band?
Um, I mean, physically, I'm far superior than I was. Um, I
Because
have,
you're 6'6", right?
yeah, yeah,
So
I'm a big guy.
you are a proper lead singer that has centre stage and sort of commands a
Yeah,
building.
look, I've always had like stage presence. I kind of make it my job to sort of fill that stage and run around and entertain people. And in the past, you know, I make a spectacle of myself, I guess. There was incidents where I'd fallen off stage or tripping over monitors and things like that. And it was all part and parcel of the show. People would just say, oh, yeah, he's just drunk again. You know, we played a festival a few years back where I dislocated some guy's arm by just high-fiving him a little bit too hard and things. And it was all, you know, I wouldn't say charm, but it was all part of the character. And, you know, it did make me wonder how I was going to deal with that going on stage. Um, but you know, I listen back now to some of those shows where I was drinking, and my performance was terrible. I was out of breath. I was struggling to remember the words and things like that. And now, you know, going on stage with a clarity of mind, I have far more energy. My singing is far better because you know it's all about the lungs and breathing right. And I'm not claiming to be a great singer. You know, I'm no kind of Bruce Dickinson or Rob Halford from Judas Priest. I'm not one of those type singers. I'm more a sort of Lemmy, and I've always said I kind of shout vaguely in tune, but it suits the music. But it's a lot better now, my performance. And I think if I look back, if I'm honest with myself, I kind of used alcohol to mask that lack of confidence, and I used to think it was kind of the Dutch courage I needed to go on stage and perform in front of sort of 25,000 people at a festival. But first time I went on stage sober, I had this natural adrenaline inside me. There was a far better buzz than anything I ever got from drink or drugs, and it was so amazing to feel that throughout the set and be able to come off stage and remember every single instance of it and look back on it and go, yeah, that was a really good show. I didn't fall off the stage. I didn't make an ass of myself. And since then, it's only got better because you learn different little parts of your act that you can sort of focus on. And yeah, it's better for me. And you know, even the band themselves, they've said, you know, fair play. It's a definite improvement. And as I say, the band have always had a kind of really close relationship with alcohol. We got a song on our third album called Alcohol Fuel, which was about, you know, obviously thought we needed it to survive and that sort of thing,
Yeah,
and played up to that. So there was a part of me that wondered how it would be received by our fan base after, you know, singing the praises of booze for so long, to all of a sudden have a front man go, no, I'm done with that. But they've been, you know, very supportive, and you know, I thank them for that, because no one's made my life really difficult. It's not been too many cases of people going, oh, what's up? Why are you drinking? You big pussy now, and all this sort of thing. But maybe because it's because I'm 6'6", I assume.
I think yeah, that could be part of it. But
Yeah,
we
but
spoke
no,
about it before we came on. But I think it's brilliant that you're a 6'6" lead singer of a heavy metal band. You're as manly as society would see, yet you're open about getting sober because you know for you and your loved ones that's the best thing. And now you're owning your stage presence. And from what you just said, like I believe when I got sober, I can feel energy a lot better. Like when it's good, that's the place I want to be. So you're using that adrenaline now to make things better for all your followers.
well, I think, you know, it takes a bigger man to say no than to just fall in line and do what society expects. I think it takes a lot more bravery to break from the norm and do what's right for yourself, regardless of how other people might perceive that. So, you know, that's one of the reasons why I cut my hair as well around the same time as I stopped drinking, because it was kind of an image, it was kind of a character I'd created for myself within the
Yeah.
band. And, you know, as a heavy metal front man, you're expected to have this long hair and a certain way about you. And I wanted to say, I know I'm going to be different. I'm not that anymore. I'm completely changed. I want to change every single facet of my persona. And, you know, I've done interviews where we've discussed this and people say, oh, it's not very rock and roll. I said, I actually disagree with that, because I think the whole sort of meaning of rock and roll is rebellion. That's how it all started. It was to piss off your parents. And by cutting my hair and going sober, I'm actually rebelling against what you expect of rock and roll. So
And that is
that,
99% of what people expect you to be is exactly everything you're going against.
yes, so, you know, there were other reasons for the cutting the hair, because I was going to the gym and it was just getting in the way. But
And I guess that brings us on to another benefit now. So I guess that's the one thing from seeing your Instagram feed is the physical change because you're 6'6". Obviously, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, 2.5 years ago, you were overweight.
yeah,
And then there's all the internal problems that you discussed earlier with the liver, etc. So
yeah.
just explain what's happened over what started and how's that developed over 2.5 years from a physical point of view.
Well, as you say, I was overweight. My weight had ballooned to 130 kilos, which was far too much. And as a kid growing up, I was always athletic. You know, I was tall, but I was athletic. I was kind of like a Peter Crouch sort of character as a footballer. I was
What
tall
position did you? Were you a striker at QPR?
because of my height. I played up front. I played centre half. I played sort of anywhere through the middle. I was kind of like an Alan Hansen style defender, or a Peter Crouch striker, or a Patrick Vieira sort of midfielder.
Yeah,
So yeah, they kind of utilised my height to the best it could. And funnily enough, if I'm honest, my heading was the weakest part of my game. I weren't that good in the air because my timing wasn't very good, but I was a decent passer of the ball, and I had decent shot on me and stuff, and I could read the game well. So, you know, that led to me going to QPR. So yeah, there was, but physically, as I say, up until about 16, 17, I was always really fit and I enjoyed sports. I enjoyed all sports. I used to play a lot of tennis, played cricket, played rugby, played basketball at school, and football was always my main go-to. But then that kind of fell away when I got into heavy metal, and you kind of you stop looking after yourself, so to speak, and that all kind of came to a head when I sort of hit that stage of 130 kilos. My beer belly was uh, giving me back problems and things like that, and I needed to make that change. So yeah, I wanted to. When I first signed up to the coach, he's like, "What do you want to do?" Because some coaches you go to build muscle, some you do to lose weight. And I said, "Well, let's start by losing the weight and see where it goes from there." So he implemented a regime that involved doing 10,000 steps a day, uh, eating healthily, and monitoring my macros, that sort of thing, and just a 4 day a week sort of gym program. And I fell in love with it. I really did. It became an obsession. You know, anybody that drinks a lot is probably an obsessive person anyway.
Yeah.
And going to the gym became my obsession. It was a great way for me to clear my head, and I enjoyed the going for a walk because I was a lazy bastard before that, and you know, the idea of going for a walk for an hour or two a day for no reason didn't appeal to me at all. But when I started it, put the headphones on and you listen to a new album or put a podcast on or something, I found it really cathartic because it gave me an opportunity to plan my day, plan my business and everything. And I love the walking. So we instantly we lost 25 kilos in about 6 months.
Wow.
I think a big part of that was obviously stopping drinking because there's a lot of calories in booze, and when you drink booze, you obviously, you know, go and get yourself a takeaway or something, and
And
you
the
eat.
lack of movement from what you were saying. You weren't
Yeah,
moving, so you're not burning any
absolutely.
calories.
Yeah, yeah. It was only when I started sort of tracking my steps on my watch that I realised how inactive I was prior to that. There was days where I was barely doing like 300 steps. It was crazy.
Wow, that is bad.
Yeah, that was really bad. And you know, my line of business, you sat at a desk most of the time, but now I love nothing more than getting out for a couple of hours and doing 10 to 15,000 steps. And like I say, listening to a podcast and planning things and doing stuff. And and yeah, the gym became sort of part of the routine. It soon became an obsession that I loved. And there's no downside to that. There's no downside to eating healthy and looking
Yeah.
after yourself
Also,
physically.
when you say obsession, I think sometimes people can see an obsession. You've just got into a healthy routine. I
Yeah,
wouldn't call it an obsession because I was very similar to you. I got a PT when I left rehab, and it
yeah,
was healthy to have a coach that could tell me how to exercise properly
yeah.
and when to exercise. So I wouldn't, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say it's an obsession, but you've got into a really healthy routine, and I think you, by all sounds of it, love it. So how's that developing on from now? So you've lost that weight.
Yeah, and then what we did a photo shoot around August last year. Just my coach and a couple of his clients. We went to see a professional photographer, and it gave me a kind of target, something to aim for, to do that whole, as you said, the cutting process and everything, to just shed the weight. And you know, if I don't mind saying so myself, I look good and really liked it. And my wife's a PT as well, and really into her fitness, and she's done bikini fitness competitions and stuff. And she was like, you know, you're not too old for this. You know, you could go further with this. And then you start watching things. I'm a big fan of Arnold Schwarzenegger and
Oh,
people
same.
like his journey and everything. And
Yeah.
you just like, it's, yeah, there's no reason why I can't give this a go with my frame. You know, it look quite good to pack on some muscle. So I said to my coach, right, next phase, now we've lost that weight and I know I can do that. I can do the cutting phase when needed. Let's try bulking up and, you know, up in the protein and that sort of thing, and see how much muscle we can put on this frame. And that's what I want to do now. As I say, you know, it's harder as you get older, obviously, to build muscle. It takes a lot longer than when you're a young man, but you know, I've got time and I'm not in a rush to do anything. I'm not going to change my ways. I still, you know, going to go to the gym every day and do what's necessary and just see where it leads. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm really loving it. We did another photo shoot recently with the whole team up in Nottingham with the top fitness photographer in the UK, a guy called Chris Bailey, and the shots come out great, and you can see that I have actually packed on some muscle and things like that. And that when you see that development, because you know yourself, it's a slow process,
Yeah.
and you need to understand, you need to know not to be disheartened by it if you don't see, you don't all of a sudden in 3 months become like, I would say, Schwarzenegger. You need to understand it's a long, slow process, and but when you do start seeing them small sort of changes, that's when you think, right, this is working, and
Yeah.
I'll carry on. And that's what I'm doing now. Is I'm having a 12-month bulking phase to see how much muscle we can put on, and you know, it's a very enjoyable journey.
Well, how many calories are you having to, well,
I'm
regardless
currently
of the macros?
currently up to 2,700 calories a day, and that's soon going to be up to 3,000. And I'm struggling to eat the food because once you've been on a deficit and like
Yeah, yeah,
calories, it's hard to sort of eat that much food again. But no, I'm you know, it's at the moment it's about 45% carbs, 35% protein, and 20% fat, and you know, drinking 3 or 4 liters of water a day, still doing the 10 to 15,000 steps a day. But the training program's getting more intense. Do 3 days on my upper and 1 day legs a week. Um, and yeah, I'm loving it. I'm really loving seeing, because when you're in a bulking phase, you almost see, you know, transformation week on week. And the good thing is, you know, it's going on in the right places. My waist is staying where it was, and that's another benefit of not drinking, is that you know you can find clothes that fit again.
yeah. And that's the thing, like, take for granted, but the confidence, those small wins at the beginning, you get from going into something you bought 5 summers ago.
Yeah,
Because my wardrobe for probably 20 years was stuff that I wanted to fit into, but still had all the labels and price tags on.
yeah. It's not just the kind of physical confidence that you get in yourself as well. I do feel more confident in myself and my physical appearance because I'm not ashamed of it anymore. But it's also the the confidence you have in everyday life. You know, as I say, it refers to my business as a booking agent. You know, I'm basically a salesman trying to pitch my clients to festivals and promoters, trying to sell them, and you can do that far better when you've got a more confident frame of mind. So
Yeah.
it's beneficial in every way.
I think, yeah, it's another thing, like in AA, when I used to go, they're talking about the soul, like the eyes are the gateway to the soul. So, like when you're saying you're trying to pitch to people, I think there's a genuine thing that they pick up at maybe a slightly deeper level than just feeling confident,
Yeah,
but they know that you're authentic almost, like you're not hiding behind a wall of anxiety, which is fueled
yeah,
drinking and drugging, for
yeah.
example.
And I think, you know, obviously being quite well known within the heavy music industry to a lot of promoters, they may have sort of been put off by my previous persona and thinking that this guy's just a drunk. He's not really serious about what he's doing. But now they can see that, you know, I'm sober, I'm professional about my business, and that comes across, and I'm reaping the benefits of that, I think.
Real. And then, yeah, I guess in terms of, like you're saying, with the walking and doing all that stuff, getting out into nature, fresh air, like the creative side of your brain sounds like it's come out of a long coma.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's apparent on the in the lyrics to our new album. I think you know, you do, you have more time, you have more clarity of thought, you sleep better, and when you sleep better, you can concentrate more the next day and see things through different eyes, I suppose. You know, when I was drinking, I was losing days at a time, and you know, if it wasn't days, it was, you'd spend half the day feeling like shit and not wanting to do anything. But now I'm up at 5 a.m. every morning, and I'm thinking about what I'm going to do. I'm planning stuff. I'm composing emails. I'm going for a walk, or I'm in the gym, or and even then, when I'm walking or in the gym, I'm thinking about what I can do better and do differently to I used to. So yeah, it's an amazing sort of place to be.
Yeah, I think it's overlooked, like the mental clarity of Like a lot of people say it's a mist that rises, and I think alcohol with all its various drugs
Yeah.
do dampen your
And
nerves.
it's hard to convey that to people without kind of sounding like you're preaching, but I guess you need to in a certain way. And that's what I
Well,
like.
this part of the podcast, isn't it? We
That's
just
what I liked about your book is like it wasn't sort of preachy. It was kind of, you know, it was almost I could sympathize with you because I'd been there and I knew what it was that you was explaining and going through, and that's what I like to try and convey to people is like I'm not going to say don't drink. You're an adult. You can make your own decisions,
yeah,
but the benefits are tenfold if you don't.
yeah, and that was a big part of my motivation to write the book was to do it from a counselling perspective because I couldn't think of anything worse than reading someone's book where they're saying, I'm brilliant, I've done all these things, I got
Yeah,
sober, follow me. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
they're
That
literally, I hate those people. But I think it's motivational counselling. So when I've counselled people before and when I went through therapy, it's very much if you ask the right questions, more powerful questions, you've got to think of more powerful answers. And when you suddenly start thinking in a different mindset, that's when these light bulb, the people who go to therapy talk about light bulb moments.
yeah.
They're the moments of realization where people go, fuck, yeah, actually,
Yeah.
that resonates because dot, dot, dot.
That's it. Yeah, I think that was a light bulb moment for me because in the past, I mean, if you went through our back catalogue of material and read my lyrics, you'd see that previously I was very much glass half empty sort of person. Everything was doom and gloom. We had songs called "Save Me from Myself" and things like this. Where I look back now, and I think well, maybe I was sort of crying for help and things.
Yeah,
And you know, there's certain lyrics on there that were a sign that I was struggling with it. And whereas this album, you know, like I said, I didn't want to preach, but I wanted to sort of convey that journey that I've been on and relay it to people in a non-preachy way. And we've got a song called Ascend the Negative, which is about sort of overcoming all that negativity in your life and looking at the world with a different perspective and see the positive in it. And it's, you know, we're in the scale of the universe, we're so minuscule and irrelevant, and
yeah,
we get a very limited time on this planet. We get, you know, 70, 80 years if we're lucky to really make a mark and enjoy ourselves. So, you know, make the most of every day. Like you say, feel the sun on your face, feel the grass on your feet, explore nature and do the things you've always wanted to do. And I don't think that people that are trapped in the world of alcohol addiction can experience that. And when you free yourself from that, it's so liberating that the world is your oyster and you can do anything.
yeah. And like you said, it's sometimes hard to talk like we are without people thinking, are they part of a cult?
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
What is this? And all it is simply giving up booze. I mean,
yeah.
it's that powerful.
That's the weirdest sort of misconception there is that, you know, if you say no to having a drink in the pub, you're considered a weirdo. Whereas,
Yeah,
as you say in the book, why would you like willingly want to put that toxic poison inside your body? The damage that it does to every sort of aspect of your life, and people consider that the norm. You know, as you say, it's we use it to commiserate people, we use it to celebrate things, we use it to, and it's just been sort of people have been brainwashed into thinking that alcohol is the answer, whereas it really shouldn't be. It should be, you know, a kind of you're the ones that are weird by doing that.
yeah. And we should be asking them, how long have you been drinking for? How many days?
Yeah,
Not
exactly.
asking us how long we've been
Not been.
preferring water over poison. I mean, that just doesn't make sense with the benefit of hindsight.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
It's funny, like when I went to rehab and I lost everything to drink and drugs. So for me, I was sort of there like a bit of an open sponge and I was wanting to learn. Like there's people that go to rehab and they're like, no, I still want to drink and do what I want outside. But I
Yeah,
was like, you know what, I'm tired. But I never thought drink was a problem initially. I thought it was the cocaine. But then
yeah,
the therapist was like, well, let's look at every situation where you've been drinking and let's go through them and let's see what happened at the end of it.
yeah,
And then you piece together and I had 20 plus years of heavy drinking and drugging to then go, everything started with alcohol.
yeah,
Like it's so obvious that alcohol was the downfall of everything. And that always led to gambling as well. So I've had gambling problems which stemmed from going to the football, but I'd only go to the football if I was drinking and doing drugs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Hand in hand. And that I can relate, you know, drugs were never a real big problem for me. Without alcohol, I wouldn't give a shit about drugs. But if I had a couple of pints, I'd have to have a couple more pints. If I had a couple more pints, then I'd have to get some drugs to kind of prolong the drinking.
yeah.
So it was a kind of, you know, a vicious circle, which you understand very well.
Well, it's funny as well. I won't mention the person's name, but I remember we got a mutual friend on Facebook, and we were both saying how we both used to drink and drug.
Yeah,
With the, it's just a small world.
yeah, yeah. Don't miss it at all, to be honest.
And that's the other thing. Like at the end of the day, these podcasts are here to try and show people the journey from what it was like to drink. And like there are times where it's good fun, but it's normally at a point where your sober tipping point for you is different to my sober tipping
Yeah,
point. I had mine a lot earlier, just because that's the way I'm made up. My brain couldn't handle doing any more drugs, and I needed to get help. But there's
yeah,
people that will resonate more with your story, and I think it's brilliant how you've changed your. So I think we call them alter egos. So your alter ego when you were drinking as the lead singer
yeah,
is now changed with you cutting your hair, getting sober, and
yeah.
that's also transcended into the lyrics as well.
Yeah, and you know, you're right. It is an alter ego. It is, you know, if you look at, there's a lot of famous rock stars throughout the years that are an alter ego. The likes of Marilyn Manson. It's a mask that they put on stage, or Alice Cooper, and things. You know, off stage he's Vincent Furnier, and he enjoys nothing more than a round of golf and stuff.
Oh, love
On stage
it.
he's cutting heads off and singing about God knows what. So yeah, that's exactly what it is. I've just changed that all to because off stage, you know, I'm just a down to earth, normal kind of guy, and I'm actually pretty shy and like I say, I actually feel more confident in myself to be myself now without the alcohol than I did when I was drinking. So yeah, I get that.
And it is great because we said earlier as well before we came on about how you're now sort of there in a non-preachy capacity, but you're owning, yeah, I'm sober for myself. And I think you said before that that's actually, you've had a lot of people reach out to you and say, yeah, maybe I need to start questioning or I need to get help with this because your fan base has followed you over the last 30 odd years
Yeah,
and they've aged with
with
you as well. So it's a similar age set, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just the fans, but the musicians that we, you know, used to play with back then who are also in that kind of vicious circle of touring and not being able to get to the gym and see that think that alcohol's the answer to everything. And they have reached out and said, you know, what have you done? And I've told them about my personal trainer. I've mentioned your book to them. I've mentioned to them about Atomic Habits and other things and they've tried it. Some of them have stuck to it, some of them haven't. But yeah, the fans especially, as you say, are of a similar age, and a lot of them have said, you know, I find it really kind of refreshing to hear that you've managed to do this, and it's inspired me to do the same. And you know, they reach out to me via social media and things like that, and that's it's nice to hear, and that's um, one of the reasons why I'm really proud of the lyrical content on this new album is because I've approached it differently. You know, in the past, I may have relied on typical heavy metal sort of subjects, you know, fantasy with dragons and swords and wizards and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, that stuff is still cool. There's still a place for that in heavy metal, but I wanted to sort of put some of my own story in there. And I'm quite an imaginative person. I enjoy writing lyrics. I find it a good form of escape. And you know, I've had people tell me that they like my lyrics, which is always nice to hear. And with this one, I've just kind of approached new subjects with a different angle on it, you know, different point of view. As I say, I see the world slightly differently. I've been a bit more personal and a bit more positive, I suppose, is the main aspect of it.
And I guess that's a good point. I think dropping alcohol and dropping all the sort of negatives of hangovers and depression that go with the weight gain and just all the chemical uh, changes that happen because of the
Yeah,
actual alcohol content. I think I can relate because I'm now one of these. annoying positive people. I
Yeah,
always look for an opportunity in a problem. So I feel like I can just bat negativity away, and I choose
yeah.
not to be around negative people. So sometimes
That's
I might catch myself bitching and moaning about someone, but it's a reflection on me,
yeah.
and I don't want to be in those groups of people anymore. I felt
I,
like the pub environment was very heavy
I
with
was
that.
going to say, I was going to say that. Yeah, one of the things I have done is I have removed myself from a lot of the social circles, and people have been like, "Oh, what's the matter with you? You're not up for this." I was just like, "No, I've got no problem with you." I said, I don't need to be in that situation anymore because it's not beneficial for me, and I need to sort of stay away from, like you say, going into a pub. I feel awkward in a pub now, and if I could do go in there, I don't like the smell of the place. I don't like the sound of the place because it just brings back so many memories of what I used to be.
Have
So
you ever been to the Cavern in Rains Park?
no,
Ah, okay. I just thought with your, because that's like a heavy metal rock pub.
yeah,
Yeah, but no, you're right. You can smell, like back in the days. I was still old enough that we used to smoke in pubs,
yeah,
and yeah, you could just smell. And like I choose not to go into pubs because I don't really socialize with anyone now that goes to pubs. Like
yeah,
they'll either be doing sober meetups or 90% of my life is golf.
yeah. I
So
mean,
it's
that's kind of been unavoidable for me with the job I do, and people often say, how is it with being around the rest of the band because they still drink, they still like to have a party on the bus at the end of the night and things like that. I put my headphones on, I go to my bunk, and I don't want to ruin their fun. As I say, they're adults, they can make their own decisions. They want to do what they want to do, then that's fine by me. I'll remove myself from the situation rather than be there going bitching about, you're not doing yourself any good with that. And I just, I do my own thing. And, when they're on the bus nursing hangovers the next morning, I'm up walking around beautiful cities that we're fortunate enough to get to visit when we're on tour and things, and
yeah,
taking their history and culture and looking after myself.
it's literally just like a completely different way of doing a tour. But I guess you could almost say it's a mature way of doing it and actually seeing all, like you said, the
Yeah,
cultural
that's it.
sounds and
I mean,
everything.
there's certain parts of the world that I've been to numerous times and never really enjoyed them. Amazing cities like New York and Chicago and LA and Tokyo, and more recently we went back to Sydney and Melbourne and places like that. And in the past, all I'd ever seen was like the inside of a dressing room or the inside of a van or a bus. But now I go there and I've got time to go for a walk and see a bit of the city, take in the sights and remember it and enjoy it, and meet people, talk to people, interesting people, experience new foods and experience culture and stuff. And that was sadly missing for good 20 years of my career with the band, 25 years of my career. So I'm making up for that now, and I love the opportunity to travel. That's one of the best aspects of the job is getting to see the world, and I want to make the most of that now.
Nice. I think from like I think people might question, oh, you're still in the environment when you're on the tour bus and stuff, but from what you've already explained, you've got these goals with your physical stuff, with all the bodybuilding, and like you just said, you actually want to go and see and explore the cities, and the mornings are the best. Like I've
Yeah,
done it. It's a benefit of sobriety that people don't really realise, but when you can get up at 7 a.m. and go around Melbourne and Sydney, because I went there
yeah,
not that long ago, and it's just incredible because hardly anyone's up.
yeah, yeah. I think cities are at their best when there's no one around. It's like I did that recently in Berlin, and you walk the streets of Berlin at sort of 7 a.m. when there's nobody
I see
about.
people like me coming out of the techno club back in the day when I went.
Yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. It's a great feeling, and I look forward to more of that.
Real. And then I guess just to wrap up on the benefits, because the thing with these podcasts is we could talk about the benefits for more than just an hour. But
Yeah.
you mentioned your loved ones. How's things changed with them since you've got sober?
Well, my wife was very similar to me, and she's done exactly the same thing. She's sober now as well, and she's her her career as a personal trainer is on the up, and she's starting her own business. She's working at the local gym, and she's in really good shape and really good health. And she's had struggles because she's type 1 diabetic as well. So it's always been really hard for her. And, you know, drink was a problem with her, obviously, because of the sugars involved and everything.
Yeah.
So she's great, and we kind of spur each other on. I think we, you know, we used to have Friday, Saturday, Sundays where we was completely obliterated, and we'd end up rowing and things like that. We now, you know, we do things that normal couples should be doing and stuff, and it's really nice. And you know, the not just the health and the mental benefits, but the financial benefits that we've enjoyed since I stopped drinking are crazy. You know, we have amazing holidays together now in places that we never thought. We've got this new house, new car. You know,
You were
it's
drinking a lot, weren't you?
yeah.
Shit.
But my son as well, he left university, and I think he'd got to a point where he would drink to the point of getting depressed and upset, and he's also gone sober now as well. I actually lent
Oh
him,
wow.
and you know, he's still a young man. He's 23 years old, and he's been sober for over a year now as well. So he's doing really well for himself. And you know, my family are all really great. But you know, because I come from a working class background, and all my family, when I was growing up, liked to go down the pub. My mum and stepdad used to run a pub in Ramsgate called the Blazing Donkey, and so I grew up around booze culture and that sort of thing, and that was pretty prevalent. My dad stopped drinking, well, must be best part 35, 36 years ago, when he was in his mid-30s. One day we was walking home from football, funnily enough, and he'd had a few too many, and the next morning he said to me, did I embarrass you last night? And I went, well, yeah, you were a bit embarrassing. He just went, right, that's it. I'll never touch another drop. And he hasn't. So fair play.
Wow. Oh,
That's, you know, that's a big inspiration to me. But, you know, my family are really proud of me. And, um, you know, despite the fact that, you know, they still enjoy it. Well, on my mum's side of the family, they still enjoy a drink. My mum, not so much. And, you know, it's all very supportive. So yeah, my relationships with everybody are great.
brilliant. I mean, again, this is what it's all about, isn't it? Just getting your side of your story and what you've seen and how things have benefited from you giving up one thing. When I say giving up one thing, I make it sound easy, but giving up alcohol for some people can be difficult. But it's
Yeah.
swapping things with fitness. I mean, fitness is a big part of the transformation formula,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's just brilliant to see. So I think almost done an hour. I mean, we could talk forever about the benefits and probably could have done a whole nother show on some stories of Orange Goblin over the years. But I think
We could probably go down that road at some point in the future.
yeah, it'd be brilliant once you finish when you're halfway through your bulking phase. It'd be great to get another
Yeah,
catch up. But as another Liverpool fan, because I'm another Liverpool fan that's always lived in London,
yeah.
but for some reason I support Liverpool. I don't know why. What are your predictions for this season under Arnie Slot?
Well, I think he's going to need a bit of time, which he'll get from Liverpool fans because we're always good at backing the manager. Um, I'm quietly confident that, you know, we didn't need a great deal of work because Klopp left us in a really good place, and I think we've seen that in a few pre-season fixtures so far that, you know, Salah looks hungry again. Elliott's going to be a really good prospect coming seasons, and you know, we've already got the likes of Diaz and Jota and Szoboszlai. I think he's going to improve. The back four don't need a great deal done to it if Trent's firing on all cylinders, and Robertson and Van Dijk and Kwanzaa looks as if he's going to be a hell of a player. Got the best goalkeeper in the world, so I think we're in good hands and good shape. I'm off to Ipswich on Saturday with my son for the
Oh,
first time of
nice.
the season.
What
Uh,
about Nunes? You haven't mentioned Darwin.
no, I don't know. He's like Marmite, and I there was a few times last season where I was like, "Ah, that's it. He's got to go. He just hasn't got it." But then, you know, he does something and he sucks you back in, and you start to think if he could just get that bit of confidence, he'd be a world beater.
So
Because
the best stat from last year was I think over the entire season, he had the most shots at goal,
yeah,
but he also had the worst conversion rate.
That's the thing. I think, as a striker, it's all about getting into the position in the first place, and he does that on a regular basis. And I think with a bit of confidence, he will score a hell of a lot of goals. And I just hope he's come back from the Copa America with Uruguay with a bit of confidence and can kickstart. Maybe the change of manager is what he needs, because it seemed as if Klopp had sort of given up on him towards the
Sidelined him a bit. Yeah.
end, kept leaving him on the bench. So maybe Slot will get the best out of him. We'll see. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not expecting us to be challenging for the title this season by any means, and I wasn't last season. And people saying, "Oh, you blew it at the end." I was like, "Well, we were in a position that we weren't expected to be in anyway, because it was a rebuilding season last year. We bought in Endo, we bought in Soboslai, we bought in McAllister. We completely rebuilt the midfield last year, and up until sort of January, we was punching well above our weight. But who knows this season? I don't think, as I said, I don't think we'll be challenging for the title, but I also think we'll definitely be in and around the top four.
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, it's so good watching Liverpool now when they're firing on all cylinders, and it'd be interesting to see the new style of football, because it's not Klopp's heavy metal football.
I think Slot has a similar sort of attacking frame of mind, doesn't he? He seems to be very kind of positive with his game plan. I don't think we're going to turn into Burnley overnight.
God, no. Yeah. Ben, it's been brilliant having you on the show, and honestly, I genuinely love seeing like your change on your Instagram feed from where you were before you got sober to now, and how everything's changed with you, with what you do with Orange Goblin and the lyrics and everything. I just think that's fascinating, and hopefully a lot of people will see that and resonate with what you've done, and hopefully kickstart their own sobriety journey. So yeah, thank you for coming on the show.
Sean, the pleasure is all mine, and I owe a big thanks to you for the book that kind of helped me kickstart it all. Anyway, so yes, it's an honour to do the podcast with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, yeah, we'll catch you next show. Cheers.